Okay, so here we have a good example of a comparison question. This one comes from the 2024 exam paper, and it's the Nazi Germany section that we're looking at. So, as with every comparison question, we have two sources, and in this case we have source A and source B. Now, it tells us what source A and B are about, so we've got the formation and characteristics of the Weimar Republic here. It also tells us down here formation and characteristics of the Weimar Republic. So keep that in mind as we go on. That's what we're reading them for. There'll be a few distractors in each source, but we're looking for anything that tells us about the formation or characteristics of the Weimar Republic. So really anything about how it was made, formed, or what it was like, its characteristics. So with this question, I'd like to start by getting some highlighters out, and I'm looking for to highlight points of comparison. So I'm looking for a keyword in source A which will reappear then in source B. So the first thing to do is of course read the sources, but then you want to go back over them with your highlighters. And I'm going to point out we've got this one here. Its new constitution was clear and easy to understand, strengthening the young democratic government. And if we have a look at source B down below, it also mentions the constitution, and here we've got the constitution caused several problems for the new government, not least because it was confusing. So we've got one point of comparison already. Source A is telling us that the constitution was a good thing, clear, easy to understand, whereas source B is telling us it caused problems for the new government and was confusing. So we've got some opposites there. Clearly then, these sources are going to disagree with each other. Okay, so now that we've had a look at both of the sources and we've made some comparisons on the paper with our highlighters, we have enough to start writing an answer. So the first thing we do is we reflect on, well, are these sources telling us the same thing or do they disagree with each other? And that gives us a starting off point for our answer and our first mark. So I'm going to begin my answer by just making that overall comparison. And I'm going to start overall, sources A and B disagree about the formation and characteristics of the Weimar Republic. And hopefully that will be enough to get me my first mark for a simple comparison. What we're going to do next, and I'm going to teach you to do this next, is try to make some developed comparisons. So we're just going to look at what we've already highlighted. And if we go back to what we've got, we can see we can pick a few of these. We can take the stuff we've highlighted in yellow or green or blue and include that in our answer. So I'm going to write source A tells us that, and I'm just going to directly quote what is written. Many welcomed the inclusion of Article 48 that gave the President the power to take control in a crisis. I'll end the quote and I'll just write source B disagrees, again making it clear what I'm arguing here by stating that, and I'm just going to quote a notable characteristic of the Republic. It's Article 48, but this was criticised for giving too much power to the President in a crisis. So again, these two quotes are telling us the opposite thing about Article 48. So they're both about Article 48, but one is saying it gives the power, the people welcome it, and the second one from source B is telling us it's too much power for the President. So I'm just going to go a little bit further, and I'm going to write source A and B disagree about the attitudes towards presidential power given by Article 48. And that will hopefully get me 2 marks, one for the comparison between the two quotes there for a simple conclusion, but then developing it with my kind of specific comment there about what it is that they are disagreeing about. I just really want to briefly go over one of the things you shouldn't do, or a couple of things you shouldn't do in this type of question. There's a couple of pitfalls that might cause you to drop marks. So you can compare these two paragraphs. They kind of are roughly the same thing. This second one down here with the big green tick beside it, that's the answer that I just wrote for us. That gets, I hope, the 2 comparison marks for the developed comparison. But this first one, although it's attempting to do roughly the same thing as this one, it doesn't do it well. So 2 things I'm just going to make stand out is the quotes here. The quote. You can see I've put an ellipsis there and I've not finished it. So it just says many welcome the inclusion of Article 48, and then I've got my quote from source B. A notable characteristic of the Republic was Article 48. Now, unfortunately, by doing that, I've kind of chopped off an important bit of the quote, and thus I'm not really making that comparison anymore. I mean, both mention Article 48, but nothing specifically really that helps us answer this question. So one word of advice is avoid doing that. It'll take you probably just as long to copy out the whole quote as it will to sit down and start the quote and decide where you're going to cut it off. So if you find 2 points of comparison within the source, quote the complete sentences. The second thing I want to draw to your attention is my attempt at developing the comparison, and I've written that sources A and B disagree about Article 48. And whilst that is broadly true, it's a bit of a generic comparison, and what the SQ are looking for are specific comparisons, which is why this one down here, it's about the attitudes towards presidential power that Article 48 gives, is a better point of comparison if we're looking to make that developed comparison. So try and do like the second example here rather than the first. And here I have my completed answer. I've got my overall conclusion to start with, I've got my developed comparison about the attitudes towards presidential power given by Article 48, and I've written one more developed comparison about how people felt about proportional representation. And again, I've just managed to complete the second paragraph here as I did with the first, and that hopefully will get me 4 marks out of 4, and hopefully it will help you get 4 out of 4 in each of the comparison questions you try. If you apply this method, you shouldn't go too far wrong.